First of all, it's very nice to see everyone here. We're all here to hopefully give chizuk, encouragement to our tefillah. I myself, I came to Indianapolis. I always find in myself that when I go to places which are new for me, and specifically places where I'm alone, like for example, I was in the summer, 2 summers ago, last summer, in an Airbnb with a family, and I was in my own little corner davening by myself, and you really, I feel for myself, I could get my emotions out, I could really pray properly. And I thought, coming to Indianapolis, it's a small place, it's a new place, and I'll be able to bring some to chizuk to my tefillah. And then I found myself that I guess there's enough people here that I wasn't able to do that to the extent that I wanted to do. So
we should stop distracting you.
No, I'm in the front right corner,
okay.
So nobody's bothering me. It's my own personal doings. It's not you. You don't bother me enough, don't worry. So I always felt that, this is in general in life. If you want encouragement, what's the best way to do it? Chidush, right? What is that? Something new, something creative. It will bring a level of encouragement in everything. And I felt like this sefer is something which really brings it out, using the birds, as we'll see, to bring out the depth of the tefillah.
What is the sefer?
It's called the Beis Tefilah.
Uh-huh.
It's written by Rabbi Yehoshua Heller, a student of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Just before I begin, just wanted to bring a very interesting historic piece that I don't think most people know about the tefillah in general. I once heard this from Rav Eitan Feiner. Everyone knows Rav Eitan from New York. Yeah, the White Shul. He's a great speaker, phenomenal, and he has a photographic memory, and he's always quoting to the page number, literally. So anything he says, is correct and accurate. So it's been a while, but the general idea of what he said, using the Chassam Sofer, that tefillah, when the Chazal back, when they made tefillah for us, a fixed 18, 19 brachos, the Shemoneh Esrei, they were coming from a period of time when there was still a lot of avodah zarah being done. And we know that the Gemara tells us that avodah zarah was something which, as much as it was really, really bad, they were really all over following these bad ways of avodah zarah, and Chazal said, this is too much. We can't do this anymore. And they took it away. They took away this pressure, this Yitzhahara for the avodah zarah. And there was that's the normal way to understand it. They took it away. They had some ruach, like divine inspiration, and they were able to do that. But the Chassam Sofer wants to say something much deeper, and that is that before this whole issue with avodah zarah, there was different times in history when there was an ability to bring korbanos, sacrifices in your own backyard. There was bamos. We call it a bama. People made their little altar in their backyard, and they were able to bring it. And then the Beis Hamikdash was built, and there was no more bamos to be used. You had to bring your korban to the Beis Hamikdash, which created an issue, because people used to be able to reach out to God right there in their backyard. They were to bring a korban. They feel a connection to Hashem. And now it's far away. You have to go to the Beis Hamikdash. So there was an avodah zarah became very, very strong, because avodah zarah was the next direction. People began to look for other places to connect in a spiritual way, and it was unfortunately the wrong way. So tefillah was something which Chazal, when they took away the avodah zarah, they had to replace it. It had to be replaced in some way. So what did they do? They gave us a fixed tefillah for our backyard, for our house, for our shul. Right there. We don't have to go to the Beis Hamikdash. We should go to the Beis Hamikdash, but on our day-to-day basis, we're able to have our tefillah, and that could be our connection in replacing that need, that desire to go chas v'shalom to the avodah zarah, and which used to be the korbanos of the bums. I thought that was just an interesting historic piece to introduce it with. So here we begin. It's a very small sefer, very, very rich. He quotes a Yerushalmi in Brachos. And I'll just read that first. It's a very short Yerushalmi. Rabbi Chia Ruba, he said that The Yerushalmi is dealing over there with kavana, having understanding of your tefillah, directing your mind properly to the words that you're saying, and the importance of it. And it says, Rav Chia said, Lo kavanis miyomech, lo kavanis el zimna chara. I never had kavana, I never understood in some way the tefillah, except for one time. By mechavana, I tried to understand my tefillah, my prayer, verharti belibi, and I thought in my heart, man ayel kumi malka. Right? Who's the one that should come before the king first? Kadma arpakta or reish gulusa? Should the one who's in charge of the governor come, or should the governor come to the king first? Really, really strange, right? That's what he thought about. He never had kavana, he never was able to, and all of a sudden he's thinking about this one time. Shmuel Amar, Ana manis afru chaya. Shmuel says, I counted the birds. I never had, right? I didn't understand the tefillah, I counted birds. Rabbi Bon Barachia Amar, Ana manis demusya. And the last opinion here, the last one that's told is Rav Bon. He says, I counted the bricks. That's the Yerushalmi. Really, really strange. Like, what is going on here? These are great people. So the different Pirushim on the side, they say things along the lines of, these people were learning all day. They didn't have time to think about all the mundane things that we're thinking of and dealing with. So this is what happened when they were learning their Torah and it came time to pray. So they had to, their minds wandered to these aspects, which seems like they're saying aspects which were related to what they were learning. So the birds, we have a lot of different laws about the birds, a lot of different laws about buildings. That's what it seems like they're trying to explain in this Yerushalmi. See, he comes to give a much deeper and satisfying understanding of this Yerushalmi. So the most of this book is going to be centered upon Shmuel. Shmuel said, I counted the birds. So I'm going to focus on that first, and then after the series on those different pieces that he deals with, I'm going to go back to the other two. So here he goes. Starts over here. In the second chapter, there's how do we understand, he wants to give a deeper understanding. How do the birds relate to the Shemoneh Esrei? So there's a Gemara in Sukkah. The Gemara in Sukkah is somewhat famous. All the way at the end, it says that on the Sukkahs, right, there's, if you count up how many cows are brought, sacrificed on Sukkahs in the Beis Hamikdash, 70 cows. So Rabbi Lazar says, what do the 70 cows correspond to? We know, we just had this in Parshas Noach, the 70 nations of the world. What's the meaning? So Rav Yochanan says, Oyu lahem la'akum sha'avdu ve'enan yodim ma sha'avdu. It says, woe to the Goyim, right, the other nations. They lost the temple. They don't even know what they lost. When there was the temple, right, we had the altar and there was korbanos brought. It brought atonement. And now they don't have it anymore. So Yochanan is saying that, besides for the fact that the other nations came and they were the ones that destroyed the temple. They thought they were doing something that was beneficial for them. It was actually much more than just not beneficial. It was detrimental. Right? It was really, really bad. What do we see from here? Not only do the sacrifices brought in the temple have a wonderful and beautiful hashpah, inspiration that affects us, the Jewish people, but so much more than that. He calls it maybe like a secondary aspect to what's happening. It brings existence to the entire world, other nations as well. Then he goes on. There's a thesis he's going to build over here, and he'll move on to the brachos. He continues that the Gemara in brachos tells us that now that we have no temple, what do we have to replace it? Tfilos keneged tamidim tiknu. So our prayers, those are corresponding to the different tamidim. Okay, so far it's just a correspondence. Gemara Megillah, the Gemara Megillah comes to explain. We just had Parshas Lech Lecha. There's the special covenant between Hashem, God, and Avraham, and over there we know that how does the Torah introduce this special covenant? So it says Hashem tells Avraham Avinu that you're going to be getting the land of Israel. And Avraham Avinu says, but how do I know? Right? How am I going to know that? And everybody wants to know, this is, Avraham Avinu is asking Hashem, how am I going to know that? Hashem tells you. Avinu trusted Hashem, to bring his own son in this coming parsha. What does this mean, that he's questioning Hashem? So there's many, many different ways to explain this. And I'll tell you the pshat over here. Here's the explanation that we are told in the Gemara here in the end of Megillah on 31b. Omar Avraham said, Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, right, Master of the world, Shema Chas v'Shalom Yisrael Chotim Lefenecha. Maybe the Jewish people are going to sin. V'ata osa lahem kedor hamabel u'kedor haflaga. And you're going to destroy them like you did to the two generations, the mabel with the water and the flaga. You disperse them. Amar lo lav. Hashem says, no, I'm not going to do that. Amar lefanav Ribono Shel Olam ha'me'ida. He says, how do I know that? He's not questioning whether Hashem is going to give him the land. Of course. But maybe his children, grandchildren, descendants are all going to do things which are going to, in turn, cause us to lose the land. How do I know? Amar lo, Hashem says, Kacha li egala mishuleshes. So what does Hashem say? If you look at the verses in last week's parsha that we read, Hashem says, take these different animals and the different birds and cut them and make the covenant. What is that referring to? It's symbolizing the sacrifices which are going to be brought by us in the Beis Hamikdash. And even if we sin, those sacrifices are actually going to be a level of atonement, and therefore Hashem says, you have nothing to worry about. You're going to get the land. You're going to keep the land. And if there's going to ever be, we'll see soon, an exile, you're going to get it back. Okay, if there's a temple, great. We have the sacrifices to help our cause. There's no temple. We'll sin in the exile, and there's not going to be a temple to help. Hashem says, no. I gave those sacrifices to the Jewish people to act upon, to do them. And Hashem says that if you have no sacrifices to give, there's no temple. You read the verses, you read about the different sacrifices, and that will actually be some level of replacement. And that's going to actually also be an atonement. So, Rabbi Yehoshua comes and he puts the two together. Well, if the Rabbanan are telling us in Barachos that our Tefilah, our prayers are actually corresponding to the sacrifices, and the sacrifices are not only going to have the ability to give us atonement while we bring them, but even after the temple is no longer, by saying over the different verses that talk about the sacrifice, you have to say that when the Rabbanan gave us the Tefilah, the prayer, it must have also had the same type of effect as the sacrifice itself would have. So they should also bring us levels of atonement. They should bring us existence. And if we said that the sacrifices are actually giving existence to the whole world, then we have to understand somehow how our prayers are not only beneficial for ourselves when we have needs, but they're actually somehow giving existence to the whole world. So now that we're holding there, we have to look at the world and see, are there actual symbolisms in the different aspects of the world, other than human beings, that could symbolize us as a nation of Jewish people, and symbolize other nations as well. So there's a very interesting, I'm not going to go into it right now, what the kosher birds. We know in the Torah there's laws that tell us only certain birds are allowed to be eaten, and there's a whole list of birds that cannot be eaten. 2 places in the Torah, both in the Shemoneh and Esrei, there's the same basic list. You can't eat these birds, about 21 birds. And there's different references to the birds, the kosher birds, being, signifying the spiritual aspect of the Jewish people. And he brings over here, also from the covenant in the last week's parsha, the non-kosher birds are actually a way to symbolize the nations of the world. It says in last week's parsha, by the covenant, that Avraham Avinu comes and takes the different animals and birds, and he splits them up like Hashem told him. And then it says, what happens? Vayered ha'ayit al bagarim, vayeshiv otam Avram. And I would scroll, birds of prey descended upon the carcasses, and Avram drove them away. So if you look at Targum Yonasan, what does this mean? What's it symbolizing? Birds of prey is a symbolism of the other nations. They're going to come to bother us, take us, and what's going to happen? Avram drove them away. His merit for all the good deeds that he did was able to shoo them off. So if we're finding that the non-kosher birds are going to be symbolizing the other nations of the world, and our Tefilah, which is in place of the korbanos, should be giving existence to the other nations of the world, like we saw on Sukkot, so then our Tefilah should also give existence to other nations symbolized by the birds, the non-kosher birds. So what he does is, this is where he is very creative, and you might not agree with some of the conclusions throughout the sefer, but if you hold with me till the end, you'll see that it's one big puzzle, and he does a beautiful job. Once you see all the different pieces, it's clearly, everything is clear that should be as exactly how he says. He wants to take the birds in Shemini and in, it's the same list basically, in Re'eh, and connect each bird with each bracha. So we have 19 brachos, 19 of the different blessings in the prayer, and he's going to go in order of the verse. Now, there's going to be some pitfalls, because if you look at the two different lists, the Shemini and Re'eh, you'll find that a few of them are out of order. And he explained, he's going to get to that. For some reason, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he said over the last book of Devarim, which has Re'eh in it, he switched the order of some of them, and there's actually an extra bird that seems to be added. So how do you deal with that? He's trying to make the first bracha of Shemoneh Esrei is corresponding to the first one. So we'll get to all that. He really does a wonderful job putting it all together. So let's go slow. So we're going to start with the first bracha, which, if you look at both verses, both in Shemini and Re'eh, it's an easy one. It's the same bird, the Nesher. So he presents the bird at the end of his discussion of each blessing. I'm going to just present it first to make it exciting. So the Nesher, we're going to have to look at each bird, either at the way that the words are, the word of the bird is spelled, the letters, or at the behavior of the bird, the characteristic, and see what is it about this bird that should correspond to this bracha. And when we say this bracha, not only are we giving existence to us, but we're actually giving existence to that aspect of the world, that bird, and that idea, that behavior, that's going to in turn give existence to that nation, those aspects of the other part of the world. So we have the Nesher. We're looking for something about the Nesher that we are told by Chazal that makes it unique over other birds. So, what do we know about the Nesher? The Nesher traditionally was always the eagle, the bald eagle. There was some discussion later. No, you think it's the vulture? You're welcome to bring this up.
You think it's the vulture?
Whichever it is.
Yeah, I think it's modern Hebrew is Nesher, but I've read that it was the vulture traditionally.
Okay, fine. There's different.
I don't know what I read.
Such a marked difference in those two birds.
Very different behaviors.
You don't find vultures on dollar bills.
Well, whatever it's going to be, it has to fit this description and this behavior that Rashi brings in Hazinu. This is a pretty famous Chazal, right? The verse here it says in Hazinu, Ki Nesher Ya'ir Kino, Al Gozalav Yerachef, Yifroz Kanafav Yikacheu, Yis'eu Al Evroso. So what does this mean? So Arsel says he was like an eagle, Hashem. Right? God was like an eagle arousing its nest, hovering over its young, spreading its wings and taking them, carrying them on its pinions. So Rashi brings over here, what's the idea?
Is that validated that eagles do carry their babies on their
Yes, I'll tell you in a minute. It's really, really interesting. So
Or is it
Rashi,
vulture?
What?
Or is it vulture?
or is it vulture? But whichever one it is, I'm just going to read the Rashi first before we get to it. Right, Rashi says what Rick is saying. Yifras kinaveu kacheu, kishaboli tlami makom makom, and the Nesher, whatever it is, comes to take its offsprings from place to place. Eino notulam beraglov ksharofos. It's not like the other birds that they pick up, with their feet. All the other birds, they're afraid from this high flying Nesher. Shuhu magbia la'of upareach alim. It's flying very high. Lefichach nosan beraglov mipnei Nesher. So they have to pick up the offsprings from their feet. But this Nesher, who's it afraid of? The arrow, man's arrow. Therefore, this Nesher carries the offsprings on its wings. Here's the.
This is all Rashi?
Yeah.
All Rashi.
Here's the Rashi. Here's the line that we're looking for our purpose. There's a behavior of the Nesher that better that the Chetz, right, wants to give up its own life. Better to have the Chetz enter my own body than to come into my son. Such a strong interest in the Shah. And this is Hashem. Pasuk says, Hashem says, I will carry you, lift you upon the wings of the Nesharim. And he goes on when the Mitzrayim, right, the Egyptians, they were chasing after the Jews by the water, and they were throwing these, they were attacking them. Hashem, what does Hashem send out? Kaviyachol sends out a form of Hashem in some way, the cloud, and he takes in all the attacks, all the arrows, everything they're throwing, instead of having the Jewish people get attacked. So actually, I did some research just to understand this. Is this real that the Nesher does this? So it seems like right. There's no. Everybody, all scientists, anyone that looked into birds, everybody agrees that it's impossible. It's an impossible feat for any bird to just carry its offspring or anything on its back like that and just fly. The way to understand this, you have to understand it in some way. They do describe a behavior that when the babies after, the offspring after, let's say, between 15 and 20 weeks, whenever they're ready to fly, so they're training, right? They need the parents, they need to have their offsprings, they need to watch them and train them in. So they're flying, and the parent, I don't know if it's the mother or father or both, will actually be under the bird, not literally, but perhaps, somewhere in the area underneath them, and will fly with them. And it even describes that when the offspring is ready to land, sometimes the male or the female will, like an airplane, land directly under them, and the offspring will actually land on their back. So, in a way, you could say that if there's going to be an arrow which is going to be shot by a human, perhaps you could say that the male or the female parent is there ready to protect the child. It's literally, right? They go very fast. They can protect. So I don't know. It's an idea. It's something to look into more. But the concept of the Nesher is a shield for its child. That's the Nesher. And we're looking back at the bracha now, and we're trying to find in the bracha, what is this bracha somehow going to correspond to that, and bring out the concept of shielding, protecting. And we really don't have to look so far to see that, the end of the bracha, Magen Avraham, Hashem is the shield of Avraham. That's just right there. It's in your face. But let's just get a little deeper with this idea. We have time. The first three brachos, Magen Avraham, Ata Gibor, and Ata Kadosh. They're all brachos of praise, praising Hashem, but very, very different, very unique. Each one has its own way of praise. The first one, if you look at it, it talks a lot about Hashem's chesed, Hashem's love. The second one is going to be discussing Hashem's strength. Gibor, Hashem does a lot of, he's able to sustain. He's a very big Gibor, strong. The third one is Kadosh. Hashem is holy. Hashem is holy always means what? Separate, right? There's a separation. Kadoshim tiyu, you should be holy. You should be separate. Hashem is separate from the world. We can't understand Hashem. So we'll get to that later. I want to focus on the first bracha. The Chazal say the first bracha, which is the bracha of Chesed, is the bracha of ahavas. It's the bracha of the forefathers. We have Elokei Avraham, God of Avraham, God of Yisrael, God of Yaakov. It's all there. But as we said, the end of the bracha ends off the shield of Avraham. There's a focus on Avraham there. Now Avraham is going to be the correspondence of the first bracha. Yitzchak is going to be the correspondence, the second bracha, and Yaakov in the third bracha. How's that? Because Avram, we know, what was his big job in the world? Achnos Orach in this week's parsha, right? He brought in Orach. He was a big Baal Chesed. He was always there loving. Yitzchak was Gibor. Yitzchak was to the din, straight. I'm going to listen to Hashem and not going to go this way or that way, straight with Hashem. And Yaakov is going to be Kadosh, as we'll get to eventually. Now, Avraham, in his way of life of Chesed, Ava was confronted with a question. This is a medrash backed by the covenant, and it really brings out the essence of who Avram was, and really big eye opener to what happened, what's happening to us right now, actually in our history, and what has happened to us for thousands of years. The medrash points out in the covenant by the Bris Hanosarim that Hashem, based on different words in the pasuk there, Hashem brought to Avraham Avinu, Hashem showed Avraham Avinu four things: the Torah, the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, and then Hashem showed Avram two negative things: Galus, exile, and Gehenna. Hashem comes to Avraham Avinu. I don't know, could be people know this medrash already, but I'll just say it. Hashem comes to Avraham Avinu. What would you prefer? If there's a need, what do you want for your children, for your descendants? Would you like the Gehenna, or would you like exile, the Galus? So the Medrash says there's two opinions. One opinion says Avraham Avinu immediately responded, I would like Galus, Malchios, the other nations to rule us. And the other opinion says that no, Avraham Avinu actually chose Gehenna. He says, I want Gehenna. Hashem responded, you want Gehenna? Your children are going to get exile. Now, obviously, we know, everybody knows that after death, there is a concept of Gehenna. So, if Hashem says, I'm going to choose exile for you, as opposed to Gehenna, what does this mean? There's going to be, we're not discussing, every aspect of a Gehenna. There's going to be some elements that could have been, directed towards Gehenna, and instead Hashem directed them towards, the kapara, the atonement that we need for our sin is going to be coming through the exile. So what's the meaning? We're going to focus on the second opinion. What's the meaning here? Right? Avraham Avinu is asked by Hashem, what do you want? He says, I'll take Gehenna. Hashem says, do you want Gehenna? I'll give you Galus. Hey, it's very, very strange. So beautiful. Comes Rabbi Yehoshua Heller. Says, we find that, what's the essence of difference between Galus and Gehenna? These two ways of atonement. Here he goes. Galus is something which, let's go the other way. Gehenna. Gehenna is something which Hashem comes and he says, you have to do this mitzvah. This is a mitzvah for you. You can't do this, Avera. You can't transgress this part of the Torah. You go ahead and you don't listen. So Hashem is a judge. There's a Gehenna waiting. We'll judge him. Gehenna brings out Hashem's mightiness as judge and as ruler, and there's no one that can come and fight against Hashem. That's what Gehenna. So it's the fullness of greatness of Hashem is right there. Galus is very different. Galus, what does the pasuk say? We go to Galus. All the nations recognize that we are the chosen people. He calls it, the chain with the key, the mashal. As long as the chain is holding onto the key, you know where the key is. So that's like us and Hashem in the exile. We are the key, and Hashem always holds on to us. Everyone recognizes that Hashem is our chosen people, whether they want to recognize it or they don't, but they do. But deep down, they understand that, and it says in the pasuk, in all the pain that we go through in Galus, Hashem is going through pain, whatever that means, on some level. So this is a chil of Hashem. When we go through exile, the name of Hashem is actually becoming desecrated in some way, right? Hashem is in the exile with us. Hashem is in pain with us. Hashem is not doing anything, right? God is letting us be controlled by the nations and being persecuted and all the bad things that the other nations do to us. And this is something which Hashem is just keeping quiet. the Rabbanan say, who's like you, Hashem, that you're able to keep quiet? So this is what happened. Avraham Avinu, his whole essence was love, right? I want to follow. He's the first convert of the whole world, and he converts, and he loves Hashem, right? What is someone who loves Hashem? What does he want? He doesn't want Hashem's name to become desecrated. He wants Hashem's name to become mekudash, to become holy, to be recognized. Where does that happen? Galus or Gehenna? Gehenna. So he says, I want for my descendants, I want Gehenna. But in Gehenna, there's no guarantee that our essence is going to be preserved. Because only in the Galus, as long as there's the chain with the key, Hashem's with us. If Hashem destroys us, that's Hashem's. You can't say it, but Hashem's not here either. We're part of Hashem in a way. So in the Galus, there's a guarantee we're going to come back. Hashem's going to save us. In the Gehenna, there's no guarantee like that. Avraham says, I love Hashem. I'm going to completely nullify my own interests, just to bring out the interest of Hashem, and that's what he says. I want Gehenna. So Hashem says, what do we always say? Midah keneged midah. What does Hashem say? You want the Gehenna? I'm going to give you the Galus. I'm going to make sure to guarantee that I'll be mevatel my own ratzon, in a way, that even though my name is going to become desecrated, doesn't matter. I'm going to give you the Galus as a way of atonement. So that's how he explains the Medrash. So, if you look at the bracha, in the first bracha we have, he gives a really, really fascinating way to explain it, using this Medrash. What do we say at the end of the bracha? Umevi goel livnei v'nehem l'man shemoh be'ahava. Hashem brings the redemption to the children, their children, the children of the descendants of the forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, l'man shemoh, for the sake of His name, Hashem's name, be'ahava, with love. So he said, what does it mean? Hashem brings us to the exile, right? And Hashem, after the exile, brings redemption. We always have this guarantee that there's going to be a redemption. Livnei v'neim, to the descendants of them, starting with Avraham, who was the big lover of Hashem, l'ma'an shemo, for the sake of His name. The name of Hashem, who throughout the exile is becoming desecrated. Right? The Goyim they don't see Hashem. We don't see Hashem the way we're supposed to see Hashem. He's not in our face. He's not revealed the way that we want it to be. Be'ahava. And it's with the full love. The love that Avram had for him, he has for us, for Avraham Avinu and his children. If you go to the beginning of the bracha also, right? Lokei Avram, Lokei Yitzchak, Lokei Yaakov, Lokel HaGadol HaGibor VaHanora, Lokel Gomel Chasodim Tovim. Hashem is a Gomel Chasodim. He does kindness, great kindness, good kindness. He remembers the chesed of the avos. Who's that? Avraham Avinu. Starting with Avram, he did tremendous kindness in his essence to the world, and in this medrash right here, that he wanted only Hashem's love, right? He wanted to love. He loved Hashem. Only wanted Hashem's interest. Anything that's good for Hashem, even if it meant his own. And I just want to bring out before we end for today, the end of this week's parsha is the place where you see, I believe, this idea in the greatest way, Akeda. Right? The greatest love that one can have, this can be argued about, one of the greatest loves one can have in this world is his children. Right? He has children, and there's just a love that's just, there's no limits. And for Hashem to tell Avram, take that love and basically destroy it. And why? Because I'm telling you to bring your son as a sacrifice. And Avraham Avinu, with no hesitation, goes. What does he do? He takes his son. And there was plenty of pits on the way. The Sultan was there bothering him, telling him, the Medrash says, the Sultan was there telling him how what he was coming to do is murder. Right? He turned the mitzvah of Hashem, the commandment, into Avera. He says, you're doing murder. And Avraham Avinu says, no, get out. You're a tamei, you're impure, I'm not listening. you're coming from a different world and you're not the one to listen to. I have a commandment from Hashem. Where do you have that glura from? Where's that strength? And the answer, that was his life. This was the 10th test. That was his life. His life was, he built himself to love Hashem to the fullest way possible. So, as Rabbi Yehoshua says, when we say this first bracha, a deeper meaning where it can even bring existence to the Nesher, to that behavior of the Nesher, which is the behavior of taking in the arrow himself in order to save the child, is actually pretty clear when you think about it, in the idea of the different places, the words of the bracha. Next time, hopefully we'll get to the next bird, in the second bracha, which is the peres, and maybe Roy could help us with the behavior of the peres next time, or what it is to begin with. But before that, also next time, hopefully there's a little more to discuss with, in a general way. There's a little question that we're leaving hanging, because Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yisrael, Elokei Yaakov is referring to 3 different of the ahavas. Avraham Yaakov, we just explained that the first bracha is all about Avram's behavior. Well, how do Yitzchak and Yaakov get in there? And they're supposed to be corresponding to the second bracha and the third bracha, the Peres and the Azniyah, which are the next 2 births. So hopefully we'll finish up that, and then we'll continue on to the next bracha. Anything else I want to add? If anyone has questions, I'm happy to discuss them now or later. And any other thoughts also, at any time, I would love to hear.
Just a brief comment. So if you look at the Parshat Shemoneh, it lists the kosher animals because most of the animals in the world are non-kosher, so it's shorter to list the ones that are kosher. But with birds, it's just the opposite. Most birds are kosher, so it lists the ones that are not kosher. So the Ben Ish Chai says, you see the birds, that represents the Jews because most of them are kosher.
Oh, wow.
The few that are not kosher, the ones that are wicked, they can do teshuvah just like that. 1 minute they're sitting on the ground, the next minute, whoop, they fly up to heaven, and just like that, somebody who's a Rosh Gomer becomes a complete tzaddik. And that's why he can say, marry me on the condition that I'm a complete tzaddik, even though he's at the moment not a tzaddik. Because just like that, he can do teshuvah.
Wow, very nice, beautiful. Are you familiar? Do you learn Ben Ish Chai in general? Or you happen to?
It's a Ben Yehoshua on Cholin.
Wow, and he quotes it. Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Scott.
Go ahead. Yeah. Hope everyone enjoyed.